using the Denodo platform at Indiana University. Number of areas that we've helped out, but he's got a few to focus on here today that should be of interest to the crew here. So real quick, and I won't spend much time. I really want to get to Dan here. He's the most important person here. Um, and I hope this is there we go. Just real quick, for those of you who aren't familiar with Denodo, first of all, we do have a number of customers in the higher ed space, Indiana University being one of them, as well as Michigan and the Unison world. But we have been present and incorporated back in 2006. Around as a research project before that, but over time we've grown quite significantly, over 1,000 customers, and really we're a data management platform. I will touch very briefly here on some of the awards for those who pay attention to analysts out there, with the Gartner Magic Quadrant, where you can see that we are up here in the Magic Quadrant as an integration vendor. I've been here for a good bit of time. In 9 years, we moved from here to here to here to here. A constant progression forward in that area. As well, when you talk about things like a data fabric, which has been a buzz lately, Forrester puts us up here in the top corner here in the leaders as well. So a lot of great recognition as well. Gartner has a peer insights where folks go out and rate us, and that's really one of the things that shows the great support we have and the great customers and success we have is that we do get very good reviews from our customer, from a Gartner perspective, from our customers. Real quick, and Dan will get into data virtualization as he sees it from a higher ed or Indiana University perspective. But I want to touch on just some of the key values or key value points that most organizations that come to us and our customers see. First of all, I'll start by saying when you look at an integration vendor like ours, it really comes down to a few things that aren't on this slide, by the way, but to consistent sets of democratized, performant, secure data that can be well managed. So that's really kind of some of the key pillars there. But really, when it comes down to the values that our customers see, and the top one there, regardless of what new we come out with, the number one thing is ease of use, the ability, which gives customers the ability to deliver data quickly to their end users and the people within their organization or outside their organization that need that, but also to do so. And I think this was a big thing for you, Dan, right? To be able to have security and governance to manage access to the data from a central state, from a central area. Also to have agility, and this is going to be a key part today, an agile data integration approach. So as our customers have been moving from one platform to another, be it from AWS or on-prem to Google, or Teradata to Snowflake, or from a reporting end moving their from a Tableau or to a Power BI, for example, or a Power BI to a Tableau, depending on which way you're going, to have that agility and to be able to do so without interrupting your business, which really makes you future-proofed. I'm not going. We are, I believe, sharing these slides afterwards. If not, I will. I don't want to read through all of these. I want to get to Dan here, but from a business and an IT perspective, this is a more detailed slide on some of the key value that we add to our customers from a security, like I said, from agility, the ability to deliver quickly, from a security standpoint, being adaptable, et cetera. So I will leave that, for you to Stan Young from the fine Indiana University.
Thank you, Eric, so much. And I don't know how many of you can read the whiteboard behind me. You probably can't. But as Eric was going through this, Eric and I have known each other for a long time. But, we met maybe 5 minutes before to talk about, his introduction and where I'd like to go with the presentation. So the slide there that talked about ease of use, security, agility, essentially, right? And future-proof. We're going to talk about all those things, and it is. I swear to you, this is not salespersonship. No, this is really just coincidence that he talked about those things, because you're going to see all of this coming up. So thank you all very much for stopping by. My name is Dan Young, and I am Some days I am the chief data architect at IU, and other days I manage, or I should say direct, our institutional data services team. So we have responsibility as part of our institutional analytics portfolio. I'll use the word institutional a lot, so you'll be sick of it by the end of this. But I report essentially through what is now our converged reporting unit. So for those of you who have institutional reporting or institutional assessment and effectiveness, we've rolled all of those teams up from a central perspective, all under one division inside of our technology organization. And my group is responsible for a little more of the BI world, business intelligence, doing dashboard development with Tableau, as well as some of the data engineering and operational support of our data warehouse. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about our experience in terms of switching cloud providers, right? So much like all of you, we have gone, I assume most everybody here on the call is heavily involved in using, you all are aware of the migration between the various platforms that's currently been going on that Bart and his team have been doing a great job of helping us through. But we, in all of this, within our data consumption end, have Denodo involved in this particular architecture and solution. So I'd like to step you through that process, give you the who, what, where, when, why of how this worked and how it worked for us. And then maybe give you an opportunity to ask a few questions in terms of where the solution sits and how we leverage it for other pieces within IU as well. So with that, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Eric's going to keep an eye on them for me because I will lose, since I like to hear myself talk, I will lose track of any chat. So he'll make sure that I stay on the course. So Abraham Lincoln said, "Never change horses midstream." I'm not sure Instructure got the message when they decided that they were going to go from data model 1 to data model 2, or data delivery 1 to data delivery 2. But nonetheless, they didn't hear Abraham Lincoln because he said horses. We're talking about courses, right? So I said, AI robot, I said, I'd like an image of somebody changing courses midstream or horses midstream, and this is what I got. So I hope you on the other side are laughing at this. If you're not, then this is a joke gone all wrong. But nonetheless, the magic of AI image generation, put the horse's head in the water, and well, you can see that. Fortunately, though, our experience in migrating using Denodo and using as well it turned out a little better than it did for that poor fella, I guess, horse person. Anyway, moving along. So I'd like to talk about this diagram in some detail. But before we do that, I feel like I need to talk a little bit about what is data virtualization for those of you who may not know. So I'm sure that we all experienced the challenge of understanding where is our data. When I started here at IU, it was pretty clear. Our data sat in Oracle databases and lived in our enterprise systems, and it moved from there to a replica into our data warehouse, and that's where we did our reporting. Well, fast forward 17 years later, that's no longer the way, right? It's not just the relational database now, but you have data spread out throughout all types and shapes and forms. And so, what do we do then from a analytics and reporting perspective to try to make sense of all this? Because the end users, at least in the case of IU, and they anticipate they're still going to be able to go use their same tools, and they're going to be able to write a query against some data set and get results back. And so how do we try to manage this particular just blossoming and blooming ecosystem? So just to give you a brief definition of what is data virtualization for those of you who may not know, it's a technology that I like. I call it the highlighted points here. It enables logical data management. It gives you a single data access layer. And so it provides real-time access, and of course, allows you to work across many, many different kinds of data sources, heterogeneous data sources. I will say logical data management here is really, for those of you who may not know, is really just a view of data, right? And it's a way for us to stitch together these views, which you could think of in a traditional database sense, traditional SQL type view, database view, but the source doesn't have to be a relational database. It can be something else, right? And so that's why you put that word logical around it, because you can take bits and pieces of these parts and put them together, but essentially provide that single data access layer. So if I'm a customer or consumer, I come and I see the data, whether it's a piece from a spreadsheet, maybe I reach out to somewhere in the ServiceNow, retrieve some data from the cloud, and maybe I mix it in with a little bit of my HR data to sort of give me the complete picture of this view that I'm looking at. So that is essentially, sort of how I see the world through data virtualization. And it was really the logical data warehouse that got us started looking at Denodo as a solution here at IU. Here's another representation of where data virtualization sort of sits inside the sort of the IT map, if you will. On the left-hand side, again, you have all of these different data sources, right? In any number of forms. And I really do mean that, whether it's API-driven SAS files, right? Some of you may be involved with statistics, that those could be used as data sources, the actual output of those, big data. I mean, all kinds of different sources. You have a data virtualization layer that sits in between there and sort of rationalizes that for all of your consumers. And your consumers may then take that data and run it through a business intelligence tool. They might provide some integration with transactional applications. One of the really interesting things that data virtualization tools, and I know for sure Denodo does it, is the ability to write back to source. So in certain situations, you can actually take and treat it as if it's, write an update statement against the table, and it will work its way back to the source. So it provides a lot of commonality. You can develop sort of standards around how you want to present and consume your data, and it takes away, it abstracts the details of gathering data from the source, but also you have a lot of capability in terms of how you consume it through APIs or SQL or other self-service types of tools. So, as I promised, then I wanted to talk a little bit about this diagram, right? So this is what you're here today to see, and this is what you're talking about. So from an IU vantage point, I first need to give, I hacked together some different ideas and images. Need to give a little credit to Florida State. My friends there, they have a diagram similar to this, so I sort of used it as inspiration. And then Denodo has some Google Cloud diagrams, and so I used AI, believe it or not. I put my image and I said, remove these parts, add these parts, and let it do its work to help me craft and create this diagram, or at least the basis of it, so that I could move it forward. But if we start here on the left-hand side, you'll notice Canvas, the student system, and these are a whole host of value-added partners, if you will, in the Unison Canvas world, who contribute data ultimately, right? Turnitin, Top Hat, all of these folks essentially contribute data into the Google Cloud Platform. And if you are a Unison stalwart, you're rolling your eyes at me right now. You're going, "This is nothing new. What are you talking about, Dan?" Well, the nothing new part's going to happen on the right hand of the diagram, so you're going to just have to hold on a second and hold your horses. That's a good joke. So we'll move on to the right hand side and begin to show where Denodo fits in this mix. But essentially, all of these sources feeding into the Unison data platform, which in our case is some combination of using Google BigQuery, Google Cloud SQL, as well as Google Cloud Storage. We actually have opportunity to use all three of those pieces within our Unison environment. And then down here, we've got our sort of traditional data sources on site, essentially our data warehouse as sits here at IU. So what do we use all this for, right? For us to begin to stitch together a lot of our other institutional data alongside the data that is inside of Unison, right out here in Google, we use Denodo. And so Denodo becomes, as I mentioned, that logical environment that we use to bring all of this data together in a way so our user can sort of get one-stop, single-pane shopping. That's probably an egregious simplification, but that's the goal, right? That they don't need to know that I'm taking this little bit of information from the student system that we store in our data warehouse, and I'm joining that back to this Unison record, and ultimately I'm providing you sort of enhanced demographics, we'll just say, as an example, on the Unison record. Ultimately, then we can serve that out. In our case, we have Tableau out here to do some of our analytics work, looking at Denodo views, but any really BI tool, anything that will speak, Postgres, JDBC, ODBC, APIs. You can speak back through Denodo, and certainly mobile and self-service and other applications that they provide. So that's what we have built. And I say we here, really it's the IU portion of it here. I hope you can see my mouse because I'm circling Denodo. The IU portion of this is really Denodo. Our friends at Unison have done a really wonderful job of helping us, put together these pieces and really, I think, guided us in terms of how to best sort of use this. But this is more about the migration path and how we ended up, making this a really quiet experience for our customers, our consumers who knew very little about all of the change that was going on here between moving from the Redshift environment into Google Cloud and ultimately, sort of aligning all of these data sources in the Unison data platform as well as the raw data itself. So I probably just blew right through this particular slide by showing you that diagram. But at the beginning of this year, we really sort of put the wraps, or sort of at least in my mind, of our migration. And I know, and some of you from Unison here are going, but we haven't moved yet the UDP data stream from Canvas Data 1 to Canvas Data 2 for IU. That is true, but from where I sit, the work of Denodo is more or less done, because unlike as we consume, I forgot how to say this exactly right, IU was an early partner with Unison, and so we leveraged a lot of the raw transactional data early on as UDP was maturing and changing across time. Now, if we were a new customer to Unison today, we likely would know nothing of the raw data, would need to know nothing of the raw data, but we knew quite a bit about it in the Canvas Data 1 format. And so we needed to be able to take and move that into Canvas Data 2. But nonetheless, sort of putting the horse in front of the cart? No, cart before the horse here. Because just to give you an idea of things that we needed to deal with in this translation, all of our raw Canvas 1 data, transactional level data, was getting moved to Canvas Data 2, and that was going to be ultimately housed in BigQuery. We have the traditional structured warehouse workload of the Unison UDP, right? And that technically, and by the way, if I'm lying here, I would love the Unison folks to speak up, because this is how I pieced my world together, and I may get some acronyms wrong, so please correct me when I'm wrong. But the UDP itself is hosted in Cloud SQL, and so we at IU interact with UDP. We interact with the raw transactional data. And then we have this notion that we are experimenting with of actually pulling down all of the raw data in Parquet format and running that through some of our big data engines here. And what that means is that we're actually getting that. Unison's helped us in putting the raw data out in Google storage buckets for us as well, so that we can just grab it and bring it down, and then ultimately it'll be processed on our side by, nonetheless, Denodo's Presto MPP engine. But that's for the future. but all of those things are pieces of the puzzle that we are putting together. So why do we do this? I alluded to this before, and essentially, as you all know, as we've had to move from Canvas Data 1 to Canvas Data 2, change ensued. Moved from one cloud, has a movement from one cloud platform to another. Instructure, of course, modified their data model, as well as, I'm sure, the ingest process that needed to be done for Unison. So we really went from that sort of that historical dimensional model to a much more transactional piece. And then in the UDP, Unison, and I fully agree, they're essentially standardizing everything they do inside of Google Cloud, right? So everything is aligned there. All of the pieces are available there, and so that's what we need to do. At least in the case of IU, there were times we were pulling some data from GCPs, some data from AWS, and I believe even for real-time type of interaction, we were actually at times interacting with some of the vendor APIs from that original diagram. So again, I'm new to this party, if you will. Canvas Data 1 was a thing that existed, it ran, and once my team became much more engaged when the Canvas Data 2 conversation started in the space. So that's why we did it, right? So what did we do? we've essentially taken in all this Unison data in different formats, and we're making it available to our consumers. Why did we do it? Because all of these factors above, but primarily that large shift of not just, not just moving data models, but changing cloud platforms, as well as several of the ways that you can access and get to that data. So here these are all the various players, at least as I could come up with, who were involved in this particular migration. But of course, we had Canvas and we had Unison. We've got all of the three. We've got all the sort of the big Google pieces with BigQuery Cloud, SQL Cloud Storage, Denodo. Our learning technologies team and data specialists. So those are the folks who had the full ride with Unison here at IU. They were the ones that really helped Eric Scull and his team really developed, and pre-Eric likely developed the infrastructure for Canvas Data 1, and then have been great partners with us moving forward in helping to move forward in Canvas Data 2, and then ultimately, our consumers, right? People who were applications which were using this data that we're pulling in. But also certainly just the consumers who were using it for, say, recording purposes and those sorts of things. So how did we do this? So what I want to point out here on this slide in particular is that way back in 2017, we had been a Denodo customer for, I believe, just a little over a year and a half, 2 years. Learning Technologies leadership at the time decided that as we were building out sort of our integrations to Unison data, the Canvas data, that we were going to use Denodo as the consumer layer. And that proved to be a very good choice because it's made our life a lot easier in 2024. So just the point to say that we decided in 2017 consumer access is going to come with Denodo, and in 2024 we made that exact same decision. What did that allow us to do? Well, I'll point to future proof down there. So from the perspective of our customers who were used to seeing a view of data, our consumers, we could, as best we could, not change, that consumption, that contract, that view that they were used to consuming. Even if we swapped out the back-end pieces, right? No longer are we pointing at AWS, we're pointing at Google Cloud. We're pointing at BigQuery or whatever the case might be, right? They were unaware of any of that sort of behind-the-curtain magic. And so when it came time to go to production, the magic, we IT magicians just did the presto changeo, and their data was still there, but they were looking, now at the brand new world, right? Everything hosted inside of Google Cloud. So that's the piece there that speaks to sort of the future-proof sort of capabilities of using logical structures and doing a logical data warehouse. I'll say something there a little bit about ease as well, right? So we were able to work with a couple of colleagues here at IU who were able to just sort of jump in at familiar database tools, sort of get them started in the direction of how do I convert some of these back-end pieces, these back-end views that are called essentially base views and derived views in Denodo. And they were able to undertake a lot of that work and make it happen without, I think, a really terribly heavy lift of moving forward into this new world. So I will say, though, if we look back through the historical lens, look at Canvas Data 1 and having Denodo in the mix here in 2017, what we found was we had really heavy use of Denodo caching. And that was partly because we were taking data from different sources, whether it was AWS or GCP or even an API, as I mentioned, and trying to bring all that together, right? Denodo had to do that work. And then we wanted to cache that result locally so that we weren't going out and always asking that same query of these data sources. So that created some interesting challenges for us on the Denodo side. We also built an awful lot of very individualized and sort of subject-specific views. So if a researcher asked to look at a certain set of data, a specific view was built for them, right? And so we had sort of this proliferation of views within Denodo being subject-specific. And then across time, which isn't shocking. We had some of the security and access controls sort of got difficult to manage. If you think about you're granting specific views for specific researchers, and how do you manage your sort of access to those, or even your audit of those, and how do you move that forward? So we had some challenges in that model. So Canvas Data 2 really gave us an opportunity to sort of rethink some of these things and try to improve what we do. So as I mentioned, we were able to refactor our Denodo views with minimal customer disruption. I need to fix my slide. I see it's running in at the bottom. We took a good look at data access control and also intentional view reuse. I mentioned those colleagues who did a lot of that hard coding. I shouldn't say hard coding. We did a lot of the sort of translation of the views between, say, one data format model and the other under the covers. We've had great discussion about how do we provide a single set of views to people who need them, as opposed to proliferating subject-specific views. And so we didn't bring that, if you will, technical debt forward between Canvas Data 1, Canvas Data 2 architecture. We did our best to identify who was using the Canvas Data 1 information actively, and those are the only pieces of the puzzle that we moved. And so hopefully, and I think we will have found that, much of that technical debt that we accrued will just drop off the radar, which is a great thing. And another piece that we have found is we do very little caching with Denodo, and that's really where you want to be. We don't want to bring all the results locally to IU and have a stored copy of them. We want Denodo to distribute that query down, and we're able to do that and have the database, if you will, the Google platform, do the work for us. And we have much better success with that, having everything housed in GCP. And from a couple of the tricks that we'll show here next, we've learned some ways to sort of optimize that. So we get very good performance on really relatively large queries, and that works its way back through the stack. So what are some of the pitfalls of all of this that we did, right? This is what we're going to talk about. One of the challenges that we had that ultimately Denodo was able to solve for us more easily with the raw data as it moved from Canvas Data 1 to Canvas Data 2 and into BigQuery. I don't know if all of you would know this, but the data itself in BigQuery, at least in our case, was stored in embedded JSON, or stored as JSON and was embedded. So essentially every table, right, the student table would have a metadata column, a JSON column, and a timestamp, or I should say a key in that scenario. And so we needed to essentially parse that JSON into a usable traditional sort of relational structure. And we were able to do that ultimately using Denodo's ready-made connectivity. We could point it at this table. We could take that JSON string, parse it, flatten it, and create ultimately a queryable data set that is updated ultimately from the source. So that was a really wonderful thing to be able to do. And it was actually, I had written a bunch of code to actually do that work. And then I talked to Denodo a little bit about it as an enhancement request, and lo and behold, they had already had it in the pipeline. And so the next release came out, and we had the connectivity, which allowed me to do away with the custom code that I had written. As I mentioned, we had quite a bit of prior technical debt, so we needed to make some decisions about, when were we going to essentially pay that back and address it. And so we chose to do it here, but that took some time to sort out. And wasn't perfect. Sometimes we maybe missed where an application had an integration or an application behaved in a way that we didn't expect. Just in my case, just some learning when interacting with Google Cloud Platform. I haven't spent a lot of time working with it, but also how does Denodo interact with GCP? For an example, I talked about the importance of delegation of queries. Now, we realize that order bys in derived views can cause a query not to delegate, and that makes sure Denodo query is very, very long, run very, very long in that case. So we had to change the way that we did a little bit of coding there, but that was learning. Also, we learned something interesting about GCP not casting data types. So we had application code that said, 1 equals 1, but 1 may have been a string and 1 might have been an integer, right, in that Java comparison. But Oracle handled it just fine because Oracle would implicitly cast. but GCP doesn't. So another little hiccup in that big transition. But in the scope of things, tiny things, tiny hiccups, tiny bumps. The most thing we've hit most recently is one of our applications, I guess, was having a good time. They were having a party and ran us out of quota in GCP. And I'm not sure if that's a Unison applied quota or a GCP applied quota, but we essentially, GCP stopped serving us results because we used too much data in any particular day. And so we're still running that one down in the context of why did this application all of a sudden require this much data and why was it querying in the manner that it is. And so we'll work through that and sort it out. But really, not a whole lot. I mean, technically speaking, that first one was definitely the most complex, and it's really a non-issue at this point for us. So it was really a very smooth transition. So going back to sort of that, this was what we're going to talk about. So this is where we ended up. So to say this is really a very good, I feel like, mature and I think stable architecture that we now have between the work of Unison and aligning themselves inside the Google Cloud and their various services, and then with IU with respect to really using our best practices and years of experience with Denodo to help really make that a very smooth and seamless transition for our customers. With respect to Denodo at IU, just a little bit of a sort of an analogy here. When we acquired the product in 2015, as I mentioned, our goal was the logical data warehouse. We had a large BI project, analytics project going on here. What we really wanted to do was to show, bring together all kinds of different data sources, and so Denodo was a good way for us to do that. Across time and across the years, we found really many other ways to use it. So if we're on the left-hand side when we bought Denodo in 2015, we're now on the right-hand side where I could be accused of trying to solve every data integration problem with Denodo. It's not meant to do that, but I'd be accused of trying to do that. Where we found sort of new developments, we can use it for data integration between systems. It does that really pretty well. Much of our work around the COVID response was around integrating different laboratory systems and integrating with our CRM and contact tracing, all those sorts of things. And Denodo was essentially the engine that helped get all of these things from A to B. And it did it very quickly because of its many its connection capability and ability to sort of extend those. So thinking a little bit about back where we are, so the ease of development, made it really fast for us to work in that environment, as well as leaning there certainly towards Agile in that case, where we worked honestly around the clock. At least some of us did, to try to get things moving and headed in the right direction. From a security perspective, I'll just go back and talk a little bit about that change in models that we've done. And trying to really streamline how we have access to the system. And Denodo supports all those different models, right? Whether it's row-based, column-based security, or obfuscation, as well in that logical presentation, right? It can do those things. It's got attribute-based controls. So it really is fully featured depending upon your particular security needs. And so it's just a matter of how you choose to run your organization and how organized you are in keeping sort of the sprawl from coming out and hitting the world. So as the data pro, you are judging me. How would you grade this transition approach? I gotta admit, I was coming in pretty green into the Unison Denodo world in terms of what had been built. I was really pleased with how smoothly it went for us and how uneventful our production migration was, and so it was really a beneficial, good experience, and once again proved that sort of all working together with the right kind of tooling, we can do a great job of improving the access and the availability of these data for our consumers, and has opened up really a whole new world for some of our peers who do analysis on our learning data, and in a way that they've not been able to I guess receive before. So anyway, that's it. That's what I have for you today. Just a little bit to talk about Denodo. I'd be happy to answer any questions, whether you want to shoot me an email or send me a message on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to do that. I'm sure Eric would be happy to answer your questions as well. Or if there's anything here, please feel free to speak up or add to the chat. So thank you.
Any questions? Give it a 5 count. 1, 2. All right. Well, folks, we appreciate your time and interest today. And if you have any questions for us, either reach out to Dan or myself, and we'd be happy to answer. And that's it for today.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.